Her heart pounded when she peered through the glass doors, half concealed by the fluttering curtains. There, beneath hazy steam rising from the lavish marble-tiled jacuzzi, she saw them, her husband Alexander, and a woman she'd trusted far too much, laughing together like giddy teenagers. Cassandra felt as if the world had shifted under her feet. How could everything come crashing down in one night? The empire they'd built, the picture-perfect marriage, was it all a lie? With trembling hands, she withdrew her phone, capturing just enough evidence to confirm her worst suspicions. From that moment on, Cassandra's path was set: divorce and revenge. Cassandra Hathaway believed she was living the dream, an opulent home in the heart of Bel Air, art pieces curated from the top galleries in Europe, and a husband, Alexander Hathaway, who shimmered with charm in every social circle. Their wedding had been the talk of the town a decade ago, a glamorous affair held in the gardens of Château de Vaux-le-Vicomte near Paris. She wore a Vera Wang gown, and Alexander had worn a custom-tailored Tom Ford tuxedo. They toasted with Dom Perignon, danced under fireworks, and everyone had whispered they're the perfect couple. Cassandra was not born into wealth. She grew up in a middle-class household in upstate New York, guided by her loving mother Jade, who worked 2 jobs, an office assistant by day and a diner waitress by night, to keep the household afloat. Cassandra's father James had passed away when she was 11, leaving them with a mortgage and little else. Despite the modest means, Jade had insisted that Cassandra attend the best schools she could manage with scholarships. Through grit and brilliance, Cassandra earned her place at Yale, where she first locked eyes with Alexander Hathaway at a leadership conference in their junior year. Alexander's background was a stark contrast to hers. He was a scion of the Hathaway family empire, a network of private equity firms and real estate holdings stretching from London to Dubai. Forbes had once featured Alexander's father, Jefferson Hathaway, on its cover with the headline, "The Relentless Tycoon." Wealth was nothing new to Alexander, who'd grown up in a gilded environment: private jets, Ivy League, preparatory schools, and lavish European summers. Yet in college, he seemed refreshingly humble, at least to Cassandra. He admired her intellect. She adored his unshakable confidence. Their romance blossomed swiftly. By the time they'd graduated, they were already discussing an engagement. Cassandra was entranced by the Hathaway clan's world of business. She found it intoxicating. Everyone seemed so sure of their place in it. She also liked that Alexander seemed to value her brain over her appearance. When he confided that he wanted to build something beyond just inheriting his father's empire, Cassandra supported him fervently. Soon, they co-founded an investment startup that specialized in green energy projects, harnessing Cassandra's analytical brilliance and Alexander's endless network of investors. Over the years, their business thrived, and so did their marriage, at least on the surface. They attended charity galas hand in hand, hobnobbed with tech moguls like Elon Musk at private luncheons in Napa, and enjoyed the best of life. Cassandra poured herself into philanthropic work, focusing on women's education and environmental preservation, while Alexander took the spotlight as the poster boy of their brand. Some rumored that Alexander had an eye for the spotlight that occasionally strayed beyond professional boundaries, but Cassandra paid no heed. Gossip was an inevitable byproduct of success. In time, their net worth soared into the hundreds of millions. They purchased a sprawling mansion in Bel Air, flanked by palm trees and shielded by wrought iron gates. The mansion had 18 rooms, an art gallery with works by Picasso and Warhol, a wine cellar stocked with rare vintages, and most prized of all, a pristine jacuzzi bordered by mosaic tiles from Italy. It was where they entertained friends, future clients, and sometimes on quiet weekends, just the two of them. Cassandra believed that Jacuzzi was a symbol of the warmth, relaxation, and intimacy that defined their marriage. She never suspected it might become the site of her deepest betrayal. But that fateful night, watching them together in the softly lit water, would transform everything. The quiet heartbreak would metamorphose into something else, something fierce and unrelenting revenge, justice, and a battle over wealth and power that would drag the Hathaway empire into a public storm. For Cassandra, that single moment of betrayal would open the floodgates to secrets she had never dreamed of. 2 days before the Jacuzzi incident, Cassandra woke up with a nagging sense of unease she couldn't quite explain. She was perched on the edge of their king-sized bed, flipping through the news on her phone. A CNN headline about Jeff Bezos and Mackenzie Scott's divorce settlement flashed across her screen. The staggering sums of money involved in that high-profile separation hardly shocked Cassandra. She and Alexander were no strangers to 8- and 9-figure deals, yet she found herself reading every detail with unexpected fascination. She heard Alexander in the shower, singing off-key to some jazz tune. His phone buzzed on the nightstand. Usually Cassandra ignored it, but that morning, a curious reflex made her glance at the screen. Sabrina Chen calling. Sabrina had once been an acquaintance of Cassandra's, an old friend from a philanthropic circle. They had drifted apart, but Cassandra knew Sabrina now worked as Alexander's new PR manager. Why was she calling at 7 in the morning? When Alexander emerged from the shower, Cassandra handed him the phone. "Sabrina just called," she said casually. He froze ever so slightly before recovering his composure. "Right. Probably about the fundraiser next month," he offered too quickly. "We're trying to finalize the sponsor list." Cassandra raised an eyebrow. "That's fine. You should probably call her back." He nodded, grabbing his phone and stepping onto their balcony, offering a sweeping view of Los Angeles. Cassandra couldn't resist the flicker of suspicion. Sabrina was known for her effervescent personality, her knack for securing deals, and whispered among some circles her relentless ambition. She was also known for being quite close, possibly too close, to certain wealthy clients. Cassandra told herself not to read too deeply into it. Alexander had countless professional contacts, and Sabrina was merely another one. Yet the feeling of unease didn't subside. As they sat for breakfast on their Italian marble patio table, Alexander's usual chatter about the day's agenda felt more forced. "Let's confirm our schedule for the next few days," he said. "We have dinner with my parents tonight, the golf tournament tomorrow, and the fundraiser next week." "Sure," Cassandra replied. "I'll need to check on the final numbers for the fundraiser. We're expecting about 200 guests, right?" He glanced away. "Yes, around that." His short, abrupt tone was unlike him. He usually loved detailing every aspect of these events. Cassandra, always a keen observer, couldn't help but notice how he dodged direct eye contact. She tried to push aside her concerns and focus on the work at hand, but something inside her felt off, like a single chess piece, out of position, hinting that the entire board might be in disarray. Cassandra plunged herself into her day meeting with staff coordinating details for the fundraiser and skimming through portfolios of potential investments. By evening, she managed to push the morning's discomfort to the back of her mind. When Alexander returned from his office, shirt-rumpled hair, slightly disheveled, he smiled like the day had been a breeze. "I'm exhausted," he said, as though an afterthought. "Let's get changed and head to my parents." They wanted to discuss some expansion plan into the Middle East. Of course. Cassandra adjusted the diamond bracelet that Alexander had gifted her on their 8th anniversary. What else is new? Not much. He shot her a practiced smile. They arrived at Jefferson and Marianne Hathaway's estate in Holmby Hills. Though older, the Hathaway patriarch and matriarch maintained an appearance of regality. Jefferson, in his early 70s, still looked imposing, with bright blue eyes and a hawk-like nose. Marianne sat at his side, wearing a classic Chanel suit, her gaze ever watchful. Dinner began with polite chatter about business. They compared notes on new energy projects, real estate expansions, and the philanthropic gala schedules. If there was tension between Cassandra and Alexander, the older Hathaways didn't seem to notice. Halfway through the main course, Sabrina Chen appeared in the hallway. She approached with a bright smile, wearing a sleek, black cocktail dress. "I'm so sorry to interrupt," she said, her voice syrupy. "I just finished speaking with some potential investors in the Middle East. They're very excited about the upcoming expansions." Jefferson waved her in. "Come join us, Sabrina. It's good to have you here." Cassandra felt her spine stiffen the moment Sabrina slid into the seat beside Alexander. Sabrina's proximity to him seemed too casual, too comfortable. Her hand brushed Alexander's arm. Just for a second, a fleeting moment. But Cassandra caught it. She also noticed Marianne Hathaway's disapproving glare. Marianne had never been the warmest mother-in-law, but she could see the potential impropriety a mile away. "Your PR management is crucial for us," Jefferson told Sabrina. "We don't want any negative publicity about the Hathaway expansions." "Of course not, sir," Sabrina answered with a polite nod, then turned to Alexander with a conspiratorial grin. "But Alexander and I have worked out a perfect narrative for the public." Cassandra's lips tightened. She forced a smile. "Care to share the details?" Sabrina looked at Cassandra as though she'd nearly forgotten she was there. "Oh, of course, Cassandra," she said, launching into a rehearsed pitch about media strategies and stakeholder engagement. Alexander said, little mostly nodding at the points Sabrina made. Something in the way he watched her, a subtle glimmer in his eyes, twisted Cassandra's stomach. She desperately wanted to believe it was just business synergy, but her instincts said otherwise. Dinner ended without further incident. But as Alexander and Cassandra got into the car, she asked Sabrina's very involved in the business. "Isn't she?" Alexander shrugged. "She's good at what she does. If we want to ensure the next round of investments goes smoothly, she's our best bet." No mention of her presence at a family dinner. No explanation why she had free rein to walk in unannounced. Cassandra swallowed her questions. She spent the drive home in silence, gazing out the window, feeling a knot of worry in her gut. She went to sleep that night, telling herself she was overreacting. Perhaps Sabrina was simply a brilliant PR manager. Perhaps she used her vivacious personality to forge alliances, a trait that Alexander admired for professional reasons alone. Still, a small, persistent voice in the back of her mind kept reminding her the best illusions always begin with a believable lie. The next evening, Alexander claimed he had an emergency conference call regarding the Middle Eastern expansion. Cassandra decided to work late in her home office, finishing up the budget for her women's education initiative. Around 10 o'clock, she went downstairs to grab a snack and noticed that Alexander's office lights were off. Odd. She wandered around the house, searching for him. The place was silent, save for the hum of the central air conditioning and the distant chirp of crickets outside. A soft glow flickered from the direction of the backyard. Intrigued, Cassandra moved toward the sliding glass doors, stepping into the breezy night air. That was when she heard it laughter echoing off the marble walls near the jacuzzi. A woman's laughter, bright and tinkling like glass wind chimes. Her pulse quickened. She tiptoed closer, partly concealed by the thick curtains that draped near the patio door. In the dim light of the outdoor lamps, she spotted two figures immersed in the steaming water. Alexander's hair was damp, his face turned toward his companion, who wore a sleek, black bathing suit. Sabrina Chen. They clinked champagne glasses. Sabrina scooted closer, and Alexander draped an arm over the edge of the jacuzzi, dangerously near Sabrina's shoulder. Laughter pealed through the night air again, with an intimacy that left no space for doubt. Cassandra's heart hammered. She fumbled for her phone, pressing record on the camera. She wanted to capture enough evidence so that later, when she questioned her own sanity, she'd have proof. The lens quivered, capturing the sight of Sabrina's hand resting lightly on Alexander's thigh. He murmured something, and Sabrina nodded, swirling her champagne. They looked like lovers, sharing a secret, unburdened by guilt or shame, sitting in the very place Cassandra had believed sacred. Her world shattered in that moment. She'd suspected, but had no idea it would be so blatant, so brazen. Anger coursed through her veins, but she suppressed the urge to storm out there, screaming. Instead, she slowly backed away, tears stinging her eyes. Her mind churned already, thinking ahead. She was a strategist by nature, and that part of her took over. If he's capable of such betrayal here in our home, what else has he done, she wondered. Were there more skeletons in his closet? What did this mean for the future of their business, their public image, and her personal fortune? She wasn't prepared to be a victim of his indiscretions. That night, Cassandra locked herself in the guest bedroom, refusing to see Alexander. She sat at the desk, phone in hand, rewatching the footage once, twice, thrice. With every replay, her fury solidified into resolve. She knew that if she confronted him, he'd deny it, twist it, or promise that it meant nothing. But Cassandra Hathaway was not a woman to be placated by lies. At 2 a.m, she texted her lawyer, an old Yale classmate named Charlotte Pierce. "We need to talk. It's urgent. Possible divorce." "I want to protect my interests," she wrote. Her finger hovered over the send button. Then she pressed it. There was no turning back. Charlotte Pierce's office in Century City boasted floor-to-ceiling windows offering panoramic views of Los Angeles. When Cassandra entered the next morning, still reeling from her discovery, Charlotte took one look at her friend's drawn face and ushered her inside. "What's going on?" Charlotte asked, eyes brimming with concern. Cassandra handed over her phone with the incriminating video pressing play. She stood there, arms folded, as Charlotte watched. Cassandra anticipated shock, or at least mild surprise, but Charlotte merely pursed her lips. "I always wondered about Sabrina Chen," she said, handing the phone back. "I've heard rumors she gets involved with her powerful male clients. Is it enough for me to get the upper hand in a divorce settlement?" Cassandra asked, voice tense. Charlotte sighed, motioning for Cassandra to sit. "Adultery can impact public perception, but legally, California is a no-fault divorce state. There's no guarantee it'll net you more in a settlement, purely because he cheated. However, it's leverage if we need to negotiate quickly or in your favor." Cassandra's shoulders sagged. "So it might not matter legally?" "Not exactly. It matters if it hints at misuse of marital assets, like if he's spending obscene amounts of money on her, or if there's a morality clause in any business agreements. Also, the Hathaway brand is built on a squeaky clean public persona. You could threaten to leak the scandal, which would damage his expansion plans. That could push him to concede to your demands." Cassandra inhaled sharply. The idea of playing dirty repulsed her, yet she recognized that Alexander had already cast the first stone. "I've never had illusions about the Hathaway brand's obsession with secrecy," she murmured. "But if we go public, it hurts the entire empire, including me." True. That's why you freeze assets first, Charlotte advised. Don't give him a chance to shuffle money around or hide anything. He's cunning Cassie. He might bury funds in offshore accounts before you can blink. Cassandra squared her shoulders. So what do I need to do? Charlotte leaned forward, eyes narrowed with professional intensity. We'll file for divorce under irreconcilable differences, but concurrently, we'll seek an order to freeze all major joint accounts and business assets, ensuring they can't be reallocated without court approval. We'll also request a full financial disclosure. If Alexander tries to outmaneuver you, we'll have legal grounds to call him out for contempt. As Cassandra listened, she felt equal parts terrified and exhilarated. She'd built the company and the brand alongside Alexander, but in the eyes of the law, he was often the face of it all. She had no illusions that the Hathaway legal team would fight tooth and nail to protect him. Let's do it, she said finally, her voice steady. I won't be walked over. Charlotte handed her a pen and a stack of documents. Sign these, and I'll start drafting the petition. Cassandra hesitated momentarily, her mind flashing with memories of her wedding day, the swirling excitement of being in love. Then she signed her name, scrawling across the pages in fierce, determined strokes. There was no turning back now. 2 days passed in a haze. Cassandra slept in the guest bedroom, ignoring Alexander's queries about her distance. Whenever he asked if something was wrong, she would simply reply that she was overwhelmed with work. She never gave him a chance to weave an excuse about the Jacuzzi incident. She wanted him caught off guard when the divorce papers arrived. On the 3rd day, Cassandra made sure Alexander was at home, relaxing in his study. She'd planned every detail with Charlotte. At precisely 4 in the afternoon, a process server arrived at the front door. Cassandra silently observed from the second-floor balcony as the young man handed Alexander a thick envelope. Alexander frowned, flipping through the documents, confusion giving way to shock, then anger. He looked around as if searching for Cassandra to demand an explanation. But she remained hidden, heart pounding in her chest. By 6 in the evening, Alexander burst into the guest bedroom brandishing the papers. "What the hell is this?" he shouted, voice echoing off the walls. Cassandra stood by the window, her posture calm. "It's a divorce petition," she replied softly. "I'm done, Alexander." He stared at her speechless for a moment. "Because I've been busy with work. Because I'm not around enough. This is insane." Cassandra met his gaze with quiet resolve. "You know exactly why," she said. He pressed a hand to his forehead, glancing at the documents. "But what is this section about freezing our accounts? You can't do that. We have business deals in progress. We have expansions to fund. That's why I did it." Cassandra returned, her tone clipped. "I won't let you funnel assets away from me or from the business we built together. I know you, Alexander, and I know the Hathaway playbook better than anyone." His eyes flashed with both fury and fear. "This is madness, Cassandra. Do you know what you're jeopardizing here?" "Yes," she said, swallowing the lump in her throat. "I'm jeopardizing a marriage that was built on betrayal. Don't pretend you're innocent. The Jacuzzi, Alexander the Jacuzzi." He stiffened color, draining from his face. For a moment, he searched for words, but none came. The truth was undeniable. Cassandra walked out, leaving him reeling. As she passed through the hall, she heard the muffled sound of him throwing something likely a heavy book against the wall. She closed her eyes and kept walking, tears threatening but never falling. If she'd learned anything from her mother's struggles, it was that she had to be strong. Within hours, Cassandra's phone rang incessantly. Calls from the Hathaway family attorneys, from Jefferson Hathaway himself, even from Sabrina Chen. She let them all go to voicemail. She had no desire to listen to their rationalizations, manipulations, or apologies. Her focus was on meeting Charlotte, finalizing the freezing orders, and ensuring her assets remained secure. Later that evening, she received an unexpected visitor, Marianne Hathaway. The older woman was ushered into the living room by the housekeeper. Cassandra stood at the top of the curved staircase, arms folded, watching her mother-in-law's entrance. Marianne looked immaculate as always, wearing a tailored jacket and skirt-set pearls glinting at her neck. "Cassandra, dear," she said in a clipped tone, "we need to talk." Cassandra gestured for her to take a seat. Marianne settled onto a velvet sofa, crossing her legs elegantly. "I'm here to see if we can resolve this matter without a public spectacle," she began, cutting right to the chase. Cassandra raised an eyebrow. "And how would you propose we do that?" Marianne exhaled sharply. "Jefferson and I agreed that a divorce would be catastrophic for the family image, especially right now. The media would salivate over any scandal. It could ruin the expansion deals. We'd prefer to handle this quietly." "Quiet divorces can still happen," Cassandra replied, "especially if Alexander cooperates." Marianne's gaze hardened. "We've already heard about the freezing of assets. That's quite an aggressive move, Cassandra. My son tells me you're doing this because of an alleged affair." Cassandra's jaw clenched. "It's not alleged, Marianne." For a moment, the older woman's facade slipped. She looked genuinely uncomfortable. "Whatever happened, can we settle this like adults? The Hathaway legacy doesn't need this kind of stain. Our family has enough experience managing private complications." Cassandra felt a rush of anger. "Managing private complications, is that code for covering up your son's infidelity?" Marianne offered a tight smile. "I'm not condoning Alexander's mistakes, but I'm saying we can handle this without dragging the Hathaway name through the mud. Let's talk settlement. Jefferson is prepared to be quite generous." "How generous?" Cassandra asked, though her voice was laced with bitterness. Marianne retrieved a folded piece of paper from her designer handbag, sliding it across the coffee table. Cassandra read it, her eyes widening at the proposed figure. It was a considerable sum, far more than she'd initially expected. But it also came with conditions, a gag order, no press interviews, and a prohibition on Cassandra ever discussing the details of her marriage. "You want my silence?" Cassandra whispered. Marianne nodded. "We want your discretion. If you accept, you'll have financial security and your philanthropic projects can continue unimpeded. If you refuse, we'll have no choice but to fight tooth and nail. I warn you, the Hathaway legal team is formidable, and you may find yourself under scrutiny too. Do you really want to open your personal life to such investigations?" A swirl of anxiety tightened in Cassandra's chest, but she refused to yield. "I won't be bullied," she stated, rising from her seat. Marianne rose as well, smoothing the front of her skirt. "I do hope you'll reconsider. I was once in your shoes facing challenges in my marriage. There are ways to handle this with dignity. Think about it, Cassandra." With that, Marianne Hathaway swept out of the mansion. Cassandra stood in silence, the settlement offer clutched in her hand. A wave of confusion flooded her. She recalled nights when Alexander had told her that his mother was a master negotiator, someone who could make the most humiliating betrayal vanish behind a well-written check and a discreet non-disclosure agreement. Cassandra felt the weight of the decision crushing her. Accepting a large settlement with conditions might be the simpler path, but it would also mean letting them dictate the narrative. She remembered her mother's struggles, her father's untimely death, and how Jade had taught her never to let anyone buy her silence or dignity. No, Cassandra would do this her way. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. Cassandra and Charlotte met daily to chart their legal strategy. They suspected the Hathaway lawyers would attempt to challenge the freezing of assets, claiming it harmed business operations. Sure enough, a letter arrived threatening to sue Cassandra for damages if she did not release a portion of the funds tied to the expansion. Meanwhile, the rumor mill churned in their social circles. Calls from well-meaning acquaintances trickled in, asking if everything was all right. Cassandra gave them polite, evasive answers. She wasn't ready to trust anyone, but one person she did rely on was her old friend, Emma Delgado. Emma had been her roommate at Yale, a financial prodigy who now worked for Morgan Stanley. Over lunch at a quiet bistro in Beverly Hills, Emma leaned in and said, "Word on the street is that Alexander has been moving corporate assets into a shell company in the Cayman Islands. My firm flagged some suspicious activity last month related to Hathaway investments." Cassandra's eyes widened. "He's already hiding money." Emma tapped her manicured nails on the table, glancing around to ensure no one overheard. "I'm not supposed to disclose client data, but your name was on some of the original incorporation documents. That's how it caught my eye. It was weird to see your signature or something that looked like it on certain authorizations." Cassandra's mind raced. Was Alexander forging her signature to move assets abroad? If so, that was a direct violation of the law. She could use this to her advantage. "I need copies of whatever you have," Cassandra whispered. Emma looked conflicted. "You know the legal risk I'd be taking by giving you that." "Please," Cassandra pleaded, her voice trembling. "He's using my name to hide money. If I can prove that I have a stronger case—" Emma exhaled shakily, then nodded. "I'll see what I can do. But keep me out of it if this blows up, okay?" Cassandra reached across the table and squeezed Emma's hand gratefully. "Of course. Thank you so much." That evening, after returning home, Cassandra found Alexander waiting in the foyer. He had a cold, steely glint in his eyes. "We need to talk about these frozen accounts," he demanded. "You're destroying the business." Cassandra brushed past him, heading upstairs. "You destroyed our marriage. I won't release a dime until we settle this." He followed her voice, rising. "This is ridiculous. You think you're going to come out of this unscathed? My father's already talking to the best private investigators. They'll dig up everything on you, old relationships, financial slip-ups, anything." Cassandra spun around at the top of the stairs. "Go ahead. I have nothing to hide," she snapped. Alexander narrowed his eyes. "Don't test me, Cassandra. You have no idea what I'm capable of." For a flicker of a moment, she felt genuine fear, but it was quickly swallowed by her resolve. "I think we both know what you're capable of," she replied, turning on her heel. "Hence this divorce." She locked herself in the guest suite, heart pounding, determined not to show him her fear. But she knew the real war had just begun. The tabloids caught wind of the brewing scandal when a well-known gossip columnist, Dominique Leroux, published a piece titled "Trouble in the Hathaway Paradise." The article was littered with innuendo, suggesting that Alexander had a wandering eye and that Cassandra was seeking a record-breaking settlement. It didn't detail Sabrina's involvement, but it hinted at a mysterious third party. In the days that followed, paparazzi circled the Bel Air mansion like vultures. Cassandra found them waiting outside the gates, cameras trained on her face. Each time she ventured out, she tried to maintain composure, wearing oversized sunglasses and ignoring their shouted questions. Alexander, on the other hand, attempted to spin the narrative. Sabrina Chen released a statement through her PR firm denying any affair. She called rumors of impropriety baseless and sensationalized, claiming her relationship with Alexander was strictly professional. Cassandra fumed. She had the video. She considered sending it anonymously to Dominique Leroux, but Charlotte advised against it. "Keep that as leverage." If you release it, you lose the element of surprise, Charlotte cautioned. Also, it might come across as vindictive. Judges don't like that, so Cassandra bided her time, letting the tabloids speculate. She focused on building her case. Emma Delgado quietly passed her copies of documents showing that a shell company had indeed been formed in the Cayman Islands with Cassandra's forged signature on some of the paperwork. Charlotte was thrilled. This proves intent to defraud marital assets, she said. We can bury him with this in court. But the Hathaway family fought back. Jefferson Hathaway called in every favor he had, from top-tier attorneys to influential politicians who might sway public opinion. Cassandra soon discovered that local news channels were airing segments on divorce gold diggers, a blatant attempt to slander her as some cunning opportunist. She recognized the tactic. The Hathaways were controlling the narrative, painting her as an avaricious spouse seeking to dismantle a beloved family's legacy. She refused to engage publicly. Instead, she prepared a press release of her own, detailing her philanthropic achievements and her significant role in building the green energy projects, showcasing that she was hardly a mere socialite living off Alexander's wealth. Yet every time she turned on her phone or opened her laptop, she saw a fresh barrage of headlines. It was exhausting. Sometimes, late at night, doubt gnawed at her. Should she just accept Marianne's offer and slip away with her settlement free from this circus? But each time she reconsidered, the image of Alexander, laughing in the jacuzzi, flashed in her mind. She refused to surrender. In the midst of this maelstrom, a surprising visitor arrived at Cassandra's door, Marianne Hathaway. Again. This time, the older woman was subdued, wearing a simple beige coat, rather than her usual power suits. She held a small envelope in her gloved hands. Cassandra allowed her in, signaling the housekeeper to stand by. She led Marianne to the drawing room, where the older woman sank into a chair with uncharacteristic heaviness. I came to tell you something that might help, Marianne said quietly. Cassandra tensed. I'm listening. Marianne sighed. Alexander isn't just having an affair with Sabrina. He's done this before. Cassandra felt her stomach drop. She had suspected but never had proof. You're telling me he's a serial adulterer, sir? Marianne gave a small, wry smile. Jefferson was the same. It's practically a Hathaway tradition. The men in this family, they struggle with fidelity. My husband cheated on me countless times. I never told anyone publicly because I was desperate to protect our family name. But I've come to realize that all I did was enable him. Cassandra stared speechless for a moment. Marianne swallowed clearly, wrestling with her pride. I'm telling you this because I know how this feels. I've lived it, and now I see the harm in staying silent. Why are you telling me now? Cassandra asked, her voice careful. Before you were pushing me to settle quietly. Marianne looked away. Because I realized how deeply the Hathaway men can wound the women in their lives, and in the end, they pay little price for it. If Alexander is forging your signature and setting you up to look like a gold digger that crosses a line. Cassandra's eyes narrowed. So are you here to help me, or just to relieve your own conscience? Marianne pursed her lips. A bit of both, I suppose. I brought you something. She slid the envelope across the table. These are old letters and receipts, proof of Alexander's other indiscretions. Maybe they'll help you in court. Cassandra opened the envelope, scanning the documents. They were indeed damning, referencing hush money Alexander had paid to another mistress 2 years ago. Receipts for expensive gifts sent to an apartment in New York that wasn't registered under his name. Cassandra set the documents aside. This could bury him, she murmured. Marianne nodded, her tone resigned. Yes, it could. Whether you use it or not is up to you. I just wanted you to know you're not crazy for feeling betrayed. It's not just Sabrina. There have been others. Cassandra felt a swirl of emotions, betrayal, anger, pity for Marianne, and a strange sense of vindication. The older woman rose. "I'll take my leave now," she said, voice trembling slightly. "I don't expect your forgiveness, but know that you have my support in the shadows. I just hope you'll handle this in a way that leaves some decency intact. For your sake and mine." Cassandra watched Marianne depart the envelope clutched in her hands. She felt like she'd just been handed the final puzzle piece, revealing a horrifying picture she never wanted to see. The legal battle lines had been drawn, and Cassandra was no longer just reacting, she was leading the charge. Armed with damning evidence, offshore accounts, forged signatures, and hush-money trails, she and Charlotte set out to expose not just Alexander's infidelity, but his financial deceit. As the hearing day dawned, Cassandra dressed with calculated precision. She chose a tailored navy suit, understated jewelry, and a simple silk blouse, powerful but not boastful. She wanted to send a clear message: she wasn't here for drama. She was here for justice. The Los Angeles Superior Court building was swarming with media security and curious onlookers. Charlotte met her at the front steps. "Stay calm. No matter what happens in there," she murmured. "We're not just defending your assets, we're defining your narrative." Inside the courtroom, the atmosphere was electric. Judge Denise McAllister, a formidable figure, known for her no-nonsense demeanor, presided over the proceedings. Her reputation for fairness and razor-sharp intellect preceded her. She glanced over the room with the same detached focus as a chess grandmaster sizing up both sides of the board. Cassandra sat straight-backed at the plaintiff's table, Charlotte by her side. Across the aisle, Alexander was flanked by a team of 6 attorneys, each whispering and tapping tablets. He wore a pinstripe suit and a carefully rehearsed smile, his expression that of a man who believed he could still charm his way out of disaster. Opening statements began, with Charlotte laying out the facts: the sudden creation of offshore entities, forged signatures found on incorporation documents, suspicious asset transfers, and corroborating evidence from Cassandra's financial advisors. She introduced the forensic audit from Morgan Stanley and cited Emma Delgado's professional credentials without revealing her direct involvement. Then came Alexander's defense. His lead counsel argued that the shell company in the Cayman Islands was a legitimate entity for foreign expansion, that any signature discrepancy was a clerical oversight, and that Cassandra had been kept in the loop all along. But Judge McAllister raised an eyebrow. Then why was her signature used without her direct authorization on multiple filings? She asked flatly. The courtroom grew still. Alexander was called to the stand. Under oath, he maintained his narrative. "I trusted my legal and business staff to handle the documents. If anything was signed improperly, it was done in error, not deceit." He spoke with smooth confidence, but Cassandra noticed his foot tapping beneath the table. Then Cassandra took the stand. She described their partnership, the business they'd built together, the hours she'd put into structuring deals, and how over time her role was increasingly diminished while Alexander pursued the limelight. She detailed her discovery of the video, the forged signatures, and the emotional and financial betrayal she had endured. "I didn't want to go public," she said clearly, her voice steady despite the lump in her throat. "I wanted dignity. But when my name began appearing on documents I never signed, when my own husband began hiding assets, we crossed into criminal territory." Charlotte followed by introducing the financial statements, Marianne's envelope with receipts and screenshots of internal transfers leading to the Shell Corporation. Each item was logged into evidence, the judge taking meticulous notes. Alexander's team pushed back. One of his lawyers stood attempting to paint Cassandra as emotionally vindictive. "Isn't it true, Mrs. Hathaway, that your motivation is rooted not in financial concern, but in jealousy over a failed marriage?" Charlotte objected instantly. "Relevance sustained," said Judge McAllister, eyeing the attorney. "Stick to the financials." Alexander's expression soured. Then Charlotte pivoted. "Your Honor, we'd also like to submit communications between Mr. Hathaway and his accountant which suggest instructions to move assets discreetly to avoid interference." These texts were recovered via subpoena. As the messages were projected on the courtroom screen, a low murmur spread through the gallery. Cassandra glanced toward Alexander. For the first time, he looked rattled. The judge called a recess to review the documents. Cassandra returned to the hallway where reporters buzzed with speculation. Cameras flashed. One journalist shouted, "Mrs. Hathaway, are you planning to release the Jacuzzi video?" She didn't flinch. "That depends on how much more lying I have to listen to," she said coolly before disappearing into a side room. Back inside, Judge McAllister reconvened and addressed the court. "At this stage, I am inclined to uphold the freezing order on joint assets pending full financial disclosure. The evidence presented today raises serious concerns regarding asset concealment and misrepresentation. I will issue my formal ruling within 7 days. In the meantime, I strongly encourage both parties to consider settlement before this matter escalates further." A quiet gasp rippled through Alexander's legal team. Cassandra exhaled slowly. The judge's gavel came down. The room emptied, but Cassandra remained seated for a moment, staring at the spot where Alexander had stood. For years she had believed in that man, supported him, loved him. Now all that remained was strategy and resolve. Outside the courthouse, Charlotte whispered, "We turned the tide today. He's cornered." Cassandra gave a slow nod, the fire in her eyes undimmed. "Now let's make sure he stays there." The courtroom battle had barely ended when the media firestorm ignited at full force. Outside the courthouse, a mob of reporters surged forward, cameras flashing, voices overlapping in a storm of questions. "Cassandra, did your husband really forge your signature? Are you going to leak the Jacuzzi footage? Is Hathaway Enterprises going under?" Cassandra kept her head high, her face a mask of calm. Her silence was her armor, and every unanswered question only fueled the public's hunger. She slipped into the waiting black SUV beside Charlotte, the tinted windows sealing her off from the chaos. Alexander, ever the performer, stepped up to a mic. With practiced poise, he delivered his version of events. "I'm deeply saddened that my wife has chosen this path. Our marriage was once beautiful, and I've always respected her. These allegations are painful and entirely unfounded." It was the kind of statement built to manipulate headlines, measured vague and dripping with faux nobility. Cassandra, listening in the car through a live news stream, nearly laughed. "He's playing the heartbroken husband now," she said, turning to Charlotte. Charlotte smirked. "He always was better at fiction than finance." Back at her Bel Air estate, the once quiet sanctuary had become a war zone. Paparazzi hovered outside the gates day and night. Drones buzzed overhead. Anonymous tipsters reached out to tabloids with outlandish stories about her, some true, many not. One blog published photos of her from college, twisting them to imply a wild past. Another suggested she had an affair with a business rival, completely false. Despite it all, Cassandra stayed quiet. It wasn't cowardice, it was control. She knew that leaking anything now would only turn the story into a media circus. Her strategy was different precision, not chaos. But behind the scenes, she struck with quiet fury. Her legal team anonymously shared the documents, those forged Cayman Islands authorizations, with a well-respected investigative journalist at the Wall Street Journal. No gossip, no scandal, just a well-researched exposé on how certain high-profile businessmen were shifting assets offshore without proper spousal disclosure. The article dropped like a bomb. Titled, "Shadow Wealth, How Shell Corporations Conceal Billions." The piece included redacted portions of Alexander's activity and implications of possible fraud. It didn't mention Cassandra directly, but anyone in the know could read between the lines. Stocks of Hathaway Enterprises dipped almost immediately. Investors panicked. Analysts questioned the viability of the company's Middle East expansion. One board member anonymously told Bloomberg, "This mess is bigger than we thought. We're looking into contingency leadership." Meanwhile, Sabrina Chen was photographed leaving a charity gala in tears. Her PR team issued a carefully crafted statement claiming she was devastated by the malicious rumors and reiterating that her relationship with Alexander was strictly professional. But no one believed it anymore. Behind closed doors, sponsors began pulling out of Hathaway's gala. Speaking engagements were cancelled. Clients ghosted meetings. The damage was spreading like wildfire. Cassandra, however, wasn't basking in triumph. She felt numb. Each win came with emotional debris. Her private pain was being dissected for public consumption. She missed the days when her name only appeared next to articles about educational grants and clean energy investments. One night, unable to sleep, she wandered into her office and opened an old photo album. There was a picture from their honeymoon in Tuscany, Alexander carrying her through a vineyard, both of them laughing. The memory punched the air out of her lungs. They had been happy once, or at least she had. She closed the album with trembling hands. "That man is gone," she whispered. The next morning, Charlotte called with more news. Alexander's team reached out, she said. "They're rattled. Between the financial fallout and the article, they know they're bleeding influence. I wouldn't be surprised if they push for mediation soon." Cassandra let the words sink in. "So the court of public opinion is doing more damage than the legal case." "Exactly," Charlotte replied. "He underestimated your silence." Cassandra smiled faintly. "Good. Let him fear what I might do next." She hung up and turned toward the window, watching the sun rise over the hills. The worst was far from over, but the tide was turning. And this time, she wasn't the one on the ropes. She was calling the shots. 30 days. That was the timeline Judge McAllister gave them to settle before the full trial commenced, and both legal teams knew the courtroom could be a bloodbath. The asset freeze had been upheld, Alexander's credibility publicly battered, and Hathaway Enterprises was hemorrhaging confidence. Now, in a sunlit corner office on the 23rd floor of Charlotte Pierce's law firm, Cassandra sat opposite the man she had once vowed to love forever. The walls were glass, the tension thicker than bulletproof glass. Alexander looked worn. The tailored suits and practiced smile were still there, but his eyes, those calculating blue eyes, were shadowed with fatigue. Cassandra, in contrast, looked calm, poised, almost serene. Her soft grey dress was simple, but commanding, and she wore no jewelry except her wedding ring, still in place for symbolism, not sentiment. "This doesn't have to be ugly," Alexander said, trying to soften his voice as their attorneys settled into place. "It already is," Cassandra replied, her tone clipped but civil. "Now let's get on with it." The mediation began. Alexander's team led with a low-ball offer, an insulting figure that didn't account for Cassandra's years of work, her equity, or the damage to her name. Charlotte didn't flinch. "You're asking her to walk away from a company she co-founded with pennies and silence," she said. "We're not here to beg." Cassandra remained quiet through most of the first day, listening, observing, letting the lawyers volley back and forth. Alexander occasionally glanced at her, but she didn't return the look. Her thoughts flicked back to their early days, sleepless nights, brainstorming pitch decks, champagne toasts after investor meetings, that heady rush when their first energy project went live in South Africa. How had it all turned so venomous? A second day of negotiations, Alexander's tone shifted from defensive to desperate. The offshore account scandal had spooked board members. Public pressure was mounting. Cassandra's legal team now held proof of at least 3 forged signatures, along with financial transactions pointing to embezzlement. Prosecutors hadn't yet been involved, but the threat loomed. "We're prepared to go to trial," Charlotte warned, sliding a new file across the polished table. "This includes evidence we haven't yet submitted. Once it enters court record, it becomes public. We both know Hathaway Enterprises wouldn't survive the headlines." Alexander's lawyer whispered something in his ear. He went pale. That afternoon, a revised offer came in significantly higher and with fewer strings attached, but it still included a gag order. Cassandra would have to agree never to speak about the marriage, the business, or the betrayal. No interviews, no memoirs, no closure. She glanced at Charlotte. "Let's counter," she said firmly. By the end of the third day, after another grueling round of talks and a final late-night session fueled by stale coffee and cold delivery food, they reached an agreement. Cassandra would receive a major stake in the company's liquid assets, half the real estate holdings, and retained rights to the intellectual property she helped develop. Most importantly, there would be no gag order. She made one personal request, that the Hathaway Foundation's scholarship fund for women in STEM remain untouched. "That's not about either of us," she told Alexander directly. "That's for the girls we once claimed to empower." To her surprise, he agreed, perhaps out of guilt, perhaps as one final gesture of the man he used to be. They signed the documents under fluorescent lights in a conference room that smelled of printer toner and tension. Cassandra's hand trembled only slightly as she finished the last stroke of her name. Alexander stood and lingered for a moment. "You were always the smarter one," he said quietly. She met his gaze. "Then, you should have known better than to betray me." He left without another word, the door clicking softly behind him. Charlotte let out a long breath. "It's done." Cassandra sat for a moment, staring at the stack of papers before her. She expected to feel triumphant, victorious. Instead, she felt hollow and then gradually lighter, like she had set down a burden too long carried. She removed her wedding ring and placed it on the table. "Let's donate this," she said. "Auction it for the scholarship fund." Charlotte smiled, symbolic and savage. "I love it." They exited the firm together. Outside, the air was bright, the LA sun glinting off the sidewalk like possibility. For the first time in a long time, Cassandra wasn't being chased by cameras or hiding from shame. She was simply herself, Cassandra Hathaway no more. Just Cassandra. She inhaled, smiled softly, and walked forward into the unknown. And there you have it, a tangled web of luxury, lies, and legal warfare culminating in one woman's fierce triumph. Cassandra's world shattered the night she saw them laughing in the jacuzzi, but from those ruins she forged a new destiny on her own terms. No hush money could buy her silence, no clever PR spin could mask the truth. In the end, she stood victorious, holding onto her principles and securing her rightful share of the empire she helped build. If you've been captivated by this roller coaster of power, betrayal, and redemption, make sure to hit the like button, share this story with fellow drama lovers, and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us bring you more riveting tales. Join us again as we delve into life's most unpredictable twists, because sometimes fiction is just a heartbeat away from reality. Thank you for listening.